Well, I guess everyone wants to know what was the purpose of the Great Pyramids of Giza. The Great Pyramid itself is the last surviving wonder of the ancient world, an incredible atmosphere of mystery and intrigue surrounds it. And as a matter of fact, when I first met the Great Pyramid, which was in 1989, I was completely dumbfounded by what I saw. I just couldn't believe my eyes. And that sense of the magic and mystery of the Great Pyramid has remained with me down all the years since that first encounter. And I've been privileged to visit Egypt probably more than 100 times. And to climb the Great Pyramid 5 times. I've 5 times stood on the top of the Great Pyramid and felt its amazing power. This monument seems to vibrate with energy as you stand on top of it. You sense that you're in a very magical and unique place in the earth. And the mere statistics alone are enough to make you wonder what is going on here. This monument weighs 6 million tons. It has a footprint of more than 13 acres. It's 481 feet high. It consists of more than 2.5 million blocks of stone. Some of those blocks of stone weigh as much as 70 tons each, 70 tons, raised to heights of hundreds of feet above the ground. Clearly we're dealing with the work that comes close to magic, where science and magic join together. Those who created the Great Pyramid definitely knew things that we do not know today. It would be extremely difficult for us, even with the most modern technology, to reproduce the Great Pyramid in the perfection that we find it today at Giza. And yet it's supposed to be one of the very first monuments ever created by the ancient Egyptians. How do we explain this? It's truly a gigantic mystery. And it's not just the size of the Great Pyramid, it's the astonishing precision of the Great Pyramid. The Great Pyramid is aligned to within 3/60ths of a single degree perfectly to true north. The error is tiny. It's the kind of error that we would associate with advanced GPS measurements today. So it's astonishing to find it in this ancient monument. And that ancient monument, the Great Pyramid, is part of a complex that consists of 2 other large pyramids, a number of satellite pyramids, the Great Sphinx, and of course huge megalithic temples, which are called the mortuary temples and the valley temples, that are found around the Giza plateau, in some cases containing blocks of stone that weigh up to 200 tons each. Clearly there's something very special going on at Giza. And I would suggest that these monuments have more than one function. I don't think that it's enough to say, as the Egyptologists do and keep repeating to us, that these monuments were the tombs of pharaohs. Actually, there's no evidence whatsoever that these monuments were the tombs of pharaohs. Not a single pharaonic burial has ever been found inside any of them. There are no inscriptions inside any of them which tell us that this or that is the tomb of this or that pharaoh. They're completely anonymous and silent. We have to deduce their purpose from studying the monuments directly and letting the monuments speak to us. One thing is clear: they have a spiritual purpose. The ancient Egyptian religion, which I believe was inherited from a lost civilization, focuses very much on the mystery of life and death. Today in our civilization, we hardly ask any questions about these matters. There's an assumption by materialist scientists that when we die, we're dead, and that's the end of the story. We're just matter, and when the matter dies, we're finished. That is the unproven assumption of materialist science. There is actually no evidence for that assumption. It's a kind of religious belief on the part of scientists that there is no life after death. No scientist has actually been there and come back and said, oh, I went there and I found no life after death. It's not based on observation. It's not based on empirical evidence. It's simply an opinion of science which has been foisted on the public. And because we have respect for science, many members of the public believe it. When it comes to the issue of life after death, I would rather listen to the masters of the field. The ancient Egyptians devoted their best minds for 3,000 years to considering no other mystery than this: what happens to us when we die? And in their view, what happens to us when we die is that we go on, that consciousness does not die, that it continues on after death, and that everything we do in this life is our opportunity to prepare for that moment. We should not waste the gift of life. We should learn and grow and develop from our presence in this body, in this life. And I believe that we cannot separate the Great Pyramids of Egypt from this profound and deeply thought out religious idea. They were part of a system designed to secure the perfection of the soul. This was a notion that was very clear in the ancient Egyptian texts, that we should seek to perfect our souls during this life, not to perfect our material wealth, not to surround ourselves with things and objects, not to put on a panoply of display and power. What we're here to do in this life is to grow and develop our soul. And I believe very strongly that the Great Pyramids were connected to this. If you're lucky enough to find yourself completely alone in the Great Pyramid, rather than with a group of 150 tourists, you'll begin to gather what I mean. A kind of silence descends. It's as though there's a spirit in the walls of the Great Pyramid that hides when there are too many people around, but that comes out and speaks to you directly when you're alone there. And even better if you're lucky enough to be there when the electricity is cut and you find yourself in complete darkness in this gigantic, echoing 6 million ton perfect monument in its narrow corridors and passageways, its pitfalls, its mysterious chambers. Find your way around that monument in the dark, as I believe the ancient initiates did. Allow the sensory deprivation to work on you, and you will begin to feel a connection with the world beyond. And that connection is nourishing, and it tells us very clearly that there's much more to this life than just our material bodies. I think the Great Pyramid was used as a place of initiation. I do envisage the pharaohs and those before them placed inside it in total darkness to overcome their fears and to allow the monument to speak to them directly. It's a kind of process of transmutation that takes place. And I think we would be wrong to separate the pyramids from that spiritual objective. But interestingly, there are many technical elements in the Great Pyramid as well, just the sheer wonder of the architecture and the astronomical and mathematical and geometrical elements of the Great Pyramid. These require us, if we wish to understand them, to initiate ourselves in those systems of knowledge. When I first came to the Great Pyramid, I was completely ignorant of astronomy and mathematics. But in order to understand the Great Pyramid and get to grips with it, I had to teach myself these subjects. I had to start learning about them. It forced me to initiate myself, and it set me on a process of learning that has helped me to grow and develop. And as a matter of fact, when people come to the Great Pyramid and are confronted by it, well, some of those people think it's just a heap of stones. But others are touched and deeply moved by these monuments. I would say the majority of people are touched and deeply moved. And in every one of them, it sets off a process of self-inquiry, which, if they follow it through to fruition, will make them better people than they were when they began. It's not an easy process. Making oneself a better person is very hard work and requires overcoming a lifetime of bad habits. But the Great Pyramids do help to set us on that road to self-inquiry. And I'm not saying that I've got there yet. I'm still a beginner on that road. But I'm grateful to the Great Pyramid for opening my mind to extraordinary possibilities and allowing me to begin in a very amateurish way to start off the learning process that was used in ancient times with the high initiates of antiquity. I'm against the idea that the Great Pyramid is some kind of machine for generating power or whatever. I think that oversimplifies the amazing perfection of the monument. I think it is fundamentally about the growth and development of the human soul. But nevertheless, it's quite likely also that the energetic powers of the Great Pyramid, which are well documented, were a further function of this monument, that it sits on top of a power point on the earth, and that the health of the whole land around it is in some way protected by this monument. So although I resist a notion that this is purely a technological monument, I don't deny that there is a possibility that it does have some technological functions.